CNN recently had a Politico Playbook co-author on by the name of Rachel Bade to explain why conservative Democrats like Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are voting against the budget reconciliation bill, or at least serving as an obstacle to its passage. Now, this is the exact type of lazy and inaccurate analysis you can expect from DC reporters. Get a load of this inaccurate conventional wisdom.
Well, there's also a divide amongst Democrats about what will it take to be successful in 2022. You have progressives who say, look, we campaigned on things like, free childcare, universal pre-K, free college. If we don't deliver on these, the base isn't going to show up. But then you have moderates who are in these swing districts who are vulnerable and say, look, if we pass a huge package like that, then I'm definitely going to lose my seat. And so there's just a fundamental disagreement in a very diverse party about what it takes, what they should pass to protect themselves in 2022.
So the conventional wisdom is that if it's a Democrat who's running for re-election in a purple state, he or she needs to be really careful when it comes to funding social safety net programs, and the budget reconciliation bill is the example that she's specifically talking about here. But why don't we take a look at what the data indicates? Because while people will have you believe, especially the media, corporate media would have you believe that there's just this massive divide among Democrats and Republicans, in reality, on bread and butter issues, there's a lot of agreement. So let's look at West Virginia first, then we'll look at Arizona. In West Virginia, if you look at the number of voters who support the Build Back Better plan, that's the budget reconciliation bill, there's actually widespread support. So when it comes to West Virginia voters overall, there's 68% who do support the bill. Among Democrats, of course, the number is much higher, 90%. Among independents, 64%. And wow, would you look at that? Even among Republicans, 56% support Biden's Build Back Better plan. I have more data that backs this up, including support for specific provisions in the bill. But Cenk, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so when you look at the policy provisions that Anna's gonna read for you guys in a second, you see that it's actually stronger than what even the overall numbers indicate. Because when you say it's Biden's plan, a bunch of Republicans just out of gut instinct say, no, I don't want it, right? But when you break down the specific proposals, they're like, oh my God, I love it. I definitely want it, right? So, but here's the most important thing here. There they are on CNN. You got a Politico reporter, this is epicenter of mainstream media. And they're telling you, well, progressives say that this doesn't play well in their districts, but the moderates say they're definitely gonna lose because this size of this package would not be popular in their states. But wait a minute, don't you have an obligation to check the polls before you declare that it is unpopular in their states? We showed you in West Virginia, we'll show you in Arizona too. They are wrong. Look, I don't know if they're wrong because they don't know politics. That's totally possible that they're lazy and they just never looked at a poll. They have no idea what the people of West Virginia or Arizona think, or they're lying to you on purpose. But neither one of those scenarios is good. But these are incredibly popular bills and provisions in West Virginia. And does it never occur to you that, hey, maybe it's actually the donors, and since they got the money, they're voting no based on that instead of their honest assessment of where their voters are in West Virginia, which you didn't check and took their word on instead of being an actual journalist.
All right, so let's look at individual provisions. And again, we're focusing on West Virginia. We'll look at Arizona in just a moment. So everything seems to be incredibly popular among West Virginia voters, including investments in long-term care. 86% of West Virginia voters are in favor of that. When it comes to expanding Medicare coverage, 82% of voters in West Virginia support that. Same with child care investments. You have 73% of voters in favor. When it comes to extended tax credits for families, 70% are in favor. Paid family and medical leave, 69% of West Virginia voters are in favor of that. Universal pre-K, 67% of West Virginia voters are in favor. Extended Affordable Care Act subsidies, 65% are in favor. And then when it comes to clean energy investments, a little lower, but still the majority of voters in West Virginia at 60% are in favor.
I'm just gonna give you the quickest little context there. 60% is a golden number in politics. you'd be so lucky to get 60% of the public on your side on any issue. The least popular provision in the bill is at 60%. And that's the one that's about clean energy, the one they tell you on television all the time that the people of West Virginia do not want. They only want dirty coal, they don't want clean energy. We just showed you, no, that's not remotely true. 60% of the people in West Virginia do want that investment. So it is an indisputable fact that Manchin's lying to you. The question is, are CNN and Politico lying to you on purpose, or are they the world's worst journalists?
So when it comes to pay-fors, right? Tax increases famously happen to be like the most sticky issue for Democrats running for re-election in purple districts. But if you look at how West Virginians feel in regard to the pay-fors that were initially included in the reconciliation bill, seems like they were incredibly popular. They want tax hikes on the rich. In fact, they want to limit deductions for wealthy business owners. 74% of West Virginians want that. 72% of West Virginians are in favor of higher income taxes for the wealthy. 69% of them are in favor of increased capital gains tax for the wealthy. 68% are in favor of IRS enforcement just to ensure that wealthy people are not dodging their taxes or evading their taxes. And 65% of West Virginians are in favor of increased corporate tax rates. And when you look at Arizona, you see similar support, which is why, again, what you hear from that political reporter in that CNN interview is complete and utter nonsense. So let's take a look at Arizona. Voters overwhelmingly do support Biden's Build Back Better agenda. And I'm talking about the Build Back Better agenda before it was stripped down as a result of Manchin and Sinema's opposition. So 65% of likely Arizona voters are in favor of it. Among Democrats, that number jumps up to 95%. Among independents, 58%. And even among Republicans, 43% are in favor of the Build Back Better agenda. You look at specific provisions, and again, very similar to what we experienced in West Virginia. 85% of people in Arizona do want to expand Medicare coverage. 85% want an investment in long-term care. 71% want child care investments. 69% want clean energy investments. 68% extend tax cuts for families. 67% paid family and medical leave in favor of. 66% are in favor of universal pre-K, and 64% are in favor of extended Affordable Care Act subsidies. And the pay-fors, I mean, just take a look at this chart. Again, you see overwhelming support for tax increases at the very top. 75% of people in Arizona want higher income taxes for the wealthy. The lowest number you see here is 66%, which is still incredibly high. 66% of people in Arizona want increased corporate tax rates.
Okay, so both in West Virginia and in Arizona, you have a nearly identical number on increasing the corporate tax rate. It's near the bottom of the priorities. Everything else is even higher, okay? But you just take that minimum number. It's 65 and 66, so two-thirds of the voters in a very red state like West Virginia, and in a purple state like Arizona say, no, we definitely want higher taxes on the rich, and we definitely want higher taxes on corporations. Manchin comes out and says, and Sinema, they both say, oh no, in our states, since they're red and purple, nobody wants higher taxes on the rich or on corporations. And every reporter like an idiot in a best case scenario. Because the other scenario is they're lying to you on purpose, and they're not manufacturing news, they're manufacturing consent. And they're the lowest workers in the corporate rule totem pole, which is really sad and pathetic. That you spent your life doing marketing for corporations when you thought you were a journalist. But let's assume they don't have bad intent. Well, then they don't know anything about their own jobs. They don't know anything about the news. They don't know anything about what the people in West Virginia or Arizona want. And worse yet, like fools, they go talk to senators, politicians, and they go, oh, what do the people of your state want? Oh, they want lower taxes on the wealthy. They want lower taxes on big business. They love big business, and they don't want anything for themselves. Childcare, no, they don't want that. Paid family leave, no. Medicare expansion, dental and vision, they don't want teeth. Who needs teeth? To see things when they're older? They don't need any of that. No, we'll write it down and we'll say it on television. Why? To trick the rest of the voters into thinking that you're a good person and you're acting honorably and that we don't live under corporate rule, and that you didn't do all of this because of the bribes you received from those industries. Well, then you're not in news. You're not in news. And they all say that. You've seen them say that 1,000 times on television. Did you know these numbers? Well, part of the reason some of you don't know the numbers is because all the mainstream media are liars and they don't tell you. They know these numbers. And New York Times will say, I have plausible deniability. I once printed these numbers on page 827 in a tiny little paragraph, and I never came back to it. But in every other article, I said that the people of West Virginia and Arizona don't want this bill, when they definitely want it. They don't want to tax the rich when they definitely want to tax the rich. Look, the mainstream media, they're part of corporate rule. So when you see crap like that on air, don't believe what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, they're just stenographers. They'll get interviews with these senators or members of the House, and they'll just regurgitate what they're told. But they never look at the actual influences behind the scenes. They never look at the personal investments of these members of Congress. They never look at the conflicts of interest. They just regurgitate what people in positions of power say. That's all they do. And that's not journalism. Journalism means that you actually go out there and you, first of all, assume that people in positions of power are lying to you. That should be number one. Maybe people might think that's a little pessimistic, but that's what politicians do. That's what people in positions of power do. They want to maintain their power. They will do anything and everything necessary to do so. So assume they're lying to you and investigate what their claims are, but they don't do that. They just regurgitate what these lawmakers say, instead of actually looking at the money that influences them, the personal financial investments that motivate them, and other, narcissistic, self-interested factors that lead to the decisions that they make. That's really what's going on.
One last thing, guys, it's not like these reporters are just angelic people who just naturally support everyone and believe everyone and trust them. They go, well, if you're saying something, I'm gonna write it down like it's true. No, if you're an outsider, they say you're not credible. By the way, all voters by definition are outsiders, okay? So you guys are not credible. If you say something, we're not gonna take it seriously. No way, and we'll look at it we'll write it skeptically, etc. But if someone in power, like a senator says it, well then I just write it down. I have no skepticism. No, journalists are supposed to do the exact opposite. You're supposed to look at people in power with skepticism. They're gonna want to maintain their power. The people who are giving money to politicians are likely to give money because they want to make more money. They want to maintain their wealth. That's obvious to any rational human being. That would be the very first step of journalism. David Sirota on CNN over the weekend, and give credit to Brian Stelter for having him on reliable sources. When Stelter asked him, what's the one thing that you think the mainstream press is doing wrong? Sirota had an excellent answer. He said, you're not following the money. You never talk about the corporate contributions. And Brian's face in the beginning was like this. Like he didn't expect that answer. What are you guys doing? What are you doing? Do journalism or just clean up and go home. Not challenging the powerful, instead challenging the powerless. It's disgusting. It's the exact opposite of what real reporters are supposed to do. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.